Welcome to FounderLine, the show where we answer your questions about startups. I'm your host, Joe Beninato. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you all with us today. FounderLine is all about helping people who have startups. We're here to try and help you with whatever situation you're having right now. You might be somebody who is thinking about starting a company, or maybe you've already started a company and you're facing a situation you want to get some advice on. Maybe you're an employee and you're thinking about joining a startup and you want to ask some questions about that. Whatever the case may be, we're here to try and help you today. This is a live show, so we are available right now to take your questions and see if we can help you out. The best ways to reach us are by emailing us, help@founderline.com, or tweeting to us @FounderLine. You can also go to our website and submit questions there. With that, let's get started. Our guest today is Jason Calacanis, who is a prolific entrepreneur. You like that word, prolific? An angel investor. He's the founder of Inside, the Launch Festival, This Week in Startups, and is also an investor in a ton of startups, including Uber, which I'm sure you've all heard of. Jason, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Big fan of yours and, of course, the show, so congratulations.
Thank you. It's great to have you, and I know how busy you are, so we really appreciate you being here.
I'm not that busy.
That's true. You just
Here's the thing. When everybody assumes that the CEOs or the angel investors are busy, the truth is they don't do any work. They just tell people to do work. So it's a lot of sitting around waiting and being anxious while the work gets done by people who actually do work in the world.
Got it. I understand that completely. So usually I start out with just a few questions to get you going.
Yeah, sure, of course.
I think Uber is where I want to start today.
Yeah.
So could be one of the most successful angel investments in history. Maybe it is already. I don't know.
Probably Google and Facebook would be much more successful right now.
But I don't know if they had like true angels. Maybe Facebook.
Peter Thiel's pretty.
Yeah.
Did pretty well. I think the Peter Thiel might have bought like 5% of the company or 10% of the company for 250 or 500K. So he did pretty well.
On Facebook?
I think that's the numbers or something to that effect.
Wow.
And now it might have been his fund or something, so I don't know if it was all his money.
All right. Well, let's say top 5 angel investments of all time, probably.
Well, here's the other thing, too, about angel investing. You have to also exit in order for it to be a successful angel investment. So on paper means, we've all learned, it doesn't mean much. And I think the company is a fantastic company. And they've got a lot of work left to do. So, although a lot of people are, the statistics and numbers around Uber are totally mind-boggling sometimes, but they got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work left. In fact, I would say there's much more work for Travis and Emil and the team there. There's much more work left than they've actually accomplished. And if you know the full ambition of what they're doing, there's a lot more left to do.
Yep.
And I think they're, it got a little heady there for a bit because we've never seen anything like this, right? Like it was pretty stunning for everybody. I think including the management team there. Sometimes a little scary, like, wow, this is really growing quickly. But now they've really built a great team and it's pretty tight and aligned. And they're really focusing on the culture, and their role in the marketplace and execution and working with governments and working with their drivers. And I think if you think of, some people look at it as a cab company, right?
Right.
But it's really a transportation company. And if you look at what's the world, and Travis just had the 5-year anniversary, and he gave a really good talk about this, a speech, in fact. The world is got a lot of problems. Obviously, a lot of these problems are not going to be solved by governments. A lot of the great problems that we face as humanity are solved by entrepreneurs, the people who watch this program, founders, in fact. And if you look at transportation in cities and the livability of cities, transportation is something that has not been equally available to all citizens. In fact, we all know that like muni stops or train stations in New York, they kind of would go where the affluent people are, and maybe poor people had to walk, 10 blocks or 20 blocks. I know we did when we were growing up in Brooklyn. You couldn't afford the rent right next to the station. You had to be a mile away. That's pretty unfair. And that last mile of transportation is something that, I think Uber and the other services that are out there provide, and they're doing it at such a low cost. So if you think about Lincoln Town cars and even cabs, those were only available to a certain percentage of the population prior to ride-sharing services like Uber. Now everybody can afford them. In fact, Uber Pool, which is a very new service, which people aren't aware of it, multiple people going in the same direction can share the same car. So, if you and I lived in Pack Heights and let's say, the mission, and we were both going to the airport, well, I could pick you up on the way. And we both would get, but without having to coordinate it. The software would all do it, and logistics would all do it.
Right.
And if you think about what that does is, we've just taken a car off the road.
Right.
And if we can do that at all times, there's this concept of a perpetual ride, where the cab's never empty. And so the downtime goes away. There's more efficiency, which means the drivers make more money, but we can charge less money. I say we, I don't have an operational role at the company. In fact, I went to the office one time in the history of the company, which was for the 5th anniversary last week. I'm pretty hands-off as an angel investor.
Well, so here's my question. How did you find Uber?
Well,
how did you make that investment?
Yeah, so I have known Travis for 15 years. So when I was a journalist doing Silicon Valley Reporter, he had started a company called Scour. And Scour was like Napster, except instead of just doing MP3 files, it would do every file on your computer. And lo and behold, people started trading movies on it when the MPEG standard came out. This was in the 90s. And he was maybe young 20s, and I was interviewing him, and I was maybe a couple of years older than him. And he had just been sued for $250 billion, $250 billion, the largest lawsuit in the history of the United States at the time, I believe. And it was because some people had put the last action hero or something up on the service. And I think that was a very interesting moment for him because his first project, which was super promising, was this sort of open source peer-to-peer network, and people could do anything they wanted with it. And then he was getting blamed for how people were using a common carrier network like YouTube or anything else. But I think that fire, and being under that fire, really made an incredible entrepreneur who then did Red Swoosh. We were friends all through Red Swoosh. And one night, we were out at a party, and we were outside, and he said, "Hey, can I show you something?" And he showed me Uber Taxi. And I said, "That's great. Can I invest?" And he said, "Sure." And, that's a life-changing moment for me. But I had 2 or 3 other life-changing moments where my friend Mark Pincus was creating a poker game, and we were having Thai food, and he said, "Hey, Jason, do you think this poker stuff in virtual currency will ever work? You're a high-stakes poker player." And I said, "Mark, this is completely asinine. How would this ever work? People playing for virtual currency, it takes out any of the value of bluffing or betting if the coins don't matter." And he was like, but. And, I was a little arrogant at the time, a little younger, and I was just like, trust me, I'm a poker player. I'm telling you this will never work. What I didn't realize was there were people who weren't poker players who were, stay-at-home moms or dads or people who play slots or people who play Scrabble online.
Just for fun.
And they do it just for fun. So that's when I started to learn, hey, schmuck, you don't need to know. You just need to know the person's driven. You don't need to know if the idea is going to work. And then the second one that happened was a friend of mine came to me and said, "Hey, can I show you this new service I made? You text this number, and then it will tell me and Biz whatever you say in your little text. And then, so I'll say that I'm having Eggs Benedict, we're having brunch, and he'll say he's having pancakes, and watch. And then all the SMSs went off. And I said, Ev, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. You took the blog post. You're a brilliant guy. You did Blogger. Now you're doing this stupid Twitter thing. You SMS. It's going to cost me money to know what Biz is having for breakfast. Nobody cares about Biz's life.
Right.
And you took the blog post out, all due respect to my friend Biz Stone, co-founder of Twitter. I said, you took the blog post out and you left the title. I said, every schmuck on the planet is now going to be on Twitter, and they're going to be putting subject lines. No, thank you. I would never want to invest in Twitter. And that's a $100 million mistake. And so after making these mistakes, I said, you know what, the next time a friend shows me something cool, I'm just going to invest in it. And that's really my investment philosophy, which is you don't actually need to know if this product is going to work or not in the market. What I need to know at the early stages is, does this person have drive and conviction, and do they have skills? And so that's my 2 tests. 1, are you passionate about this idea, and are you knowledgeable and smart and clever, and do you have hustle and resiliency? All personality traits, which I attribute my skill at doing that to really poker and playing poker for thousands of hours. So while some people might say, hey, you waste all this time playing poker, I play once a week, probably for, 8 hours of my life for the last 10 years. People say, wow, what did that all amount to? I'll tell you what it amounts to. When I look at somebody, I can tell if they're lying. When I look at somebody, I can tell if they're lying if they don't know they're actually lying, right? I can tell if somebody doesn't have conviction. I can tell if somebody doesn't have the goods.
Yep.
And then I can just look at their execution and say, hey, is this PowerPoint deck done with great execution? Is this mock-up? Is this wireframe? Is this logo? Is this name? I can just see the craftsmanship in things, which I got from just being in the industry for a long time.
Yep.
And really, if just that's, as an angel investor, you have to go to your skills. Some people have deep technical skills, product skills, sales skills. You're really a highly technical person, right? And business model person. Like you might look at those things and be able to figure it out from that angle. I figure it out from the person, and just do they have skills and passion?
Yeah.
And with Travis, it's like, and Garrett, these are two individuals who have massive passion and massive skills.
I think it's the number one skill in doing a startup.
Passion.
Is just relentless pursuit of whatever it is. Even when everyone tells you it's stupid or...
Well, those are the best investments.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm not really interested in investing things that everybody's investing in. So when somebody comes to me and says, the round's closing, everybody's in it, all these people are in it, I'm kind of like, well, I kind of don't want to be in that because I look at who the people are, and if it's the lemmings part of the investor community, which is probably the majority, I do not want to be involved in that because it generally is not a sign that it's good. I want to be the person who writes the check when nobody else believes in you.
Yeah.
I want to be that person.
Those are going to be the biggest hits, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I look like an idiot when I write the checks, and then I'm proven to be an idiot frequently, more times than not. But all you need in angel investing is one Uber to make a career. In fact, you can make 100 careers, and so I'm just focused on the really crazy. I call my syndicate on AngelList and my investing style the trench run, which is a reference to Star Wars when Luke Skywalker goes into the trench and he's got to hit the exhaust vent to cause the chain reaction to blow up the Death Star, and everybody tells him like, this is impossible. And he says, well, I used to shoot womp rats, they're smaller than that vent. Right. So of course it's possible for me to go in there, have Darth Vader chasing me with TIE fighters, and to have cannons blasting me. I love that. I love the trench run. I love when the odds are so against your favor that if you do hit it, you get the spectacular reaction and reward of blowing up the Death Star.
All right. Well, so you made a decision last year, I think it was, to move from LA up to San Francisco.
Yeah, I was coming up every week.
Big decision in your life, right?
Yes and no. I was coming here for the past 10 years, I would say on average every other week. And sometimes it was every week. Sometimes it'd be twice a week.
Wow.
And it was getting a little bit untenable because it was fine when I was just married and it was me and my wife. Because, hey, getting a day off or two for me is probably a good deal for her. Like, she'd be like, yeah, good. You're going to be gone for 40 hours? Great. I don't have to listen to you talking constantly. But then when you have a little 3-year-old girl at home, 4-year-old girl, and she grabs your leg and says, Daddy, if you leave, I'd be so sad. And I'm like, where do you come up with these things to break my heart? So then I just talked to my wife and I was like, hey, 18 of the last 20 trips were to San Francisco. Would you mind? She's like, let's do it. So I did it. And it's been fabulous because I haven't felt this creatively engaged and I haven't felt this intellectually engaged and passionate since my time in New York during the 90s when the internet first emerged and everybody believed anything was possible. What's great about the city of San Francisco is, in the Bay Area, is I think it's turning into the best of New York and the best of the Bay Area. Some hybrid where it's becoming a hugely cosmopolitan, elegant, fashionable, cultural city, affluent city, while you still have this group of people who believe they can change the world just by going to work every day and starting something. And that passion is just like, it's a moment in history. There's no place on the planet that anybody should be other than this area. This is the zeitgeist, is the most influential,
totally agree.
15 square miles on the planet. There is no place more influential than maybe Putin's, 50, whatever the mile surrounding Putin is, that's probably the second most and the most dangerous area to be. But other than that, we're going to make the most impact.
So do you miss LA? Like, do you feel like you've lost something by not being down there? Because
no, not at all.
Peter Pham's always
no, not
talking
at all.
about.
Yeah, well, Peter Pham keeps flip-flopping. Listen, the lifestyle in LA, as I tell everybody, is like if Hawaii and New York had a love child, it's LA. Yeah. You get to like literally bum out, go to the beach, and have palm trees, and feel like you're living in Hawaii, or you can just put your head down and get to work like in New York. And there's a bunch of hustlers there too. I love LA. I'm certainly going to live there again in my life, I'm sure. Just like I'm sure I'll spend some more time in New York at some point in my life. But at this point in history, there is no more important city in the world than San Francisco.
Love it. So, you are prolific, as I said earlier. It seems like you've got 18 things going on at once.
It does.
Between the launch festival and doing your show and angel investing and running Inside. So, how do you, with a family, I have kids as well. How do you balance all this stuff?
Yeah. So it seems like I'm extremely busy. What people don't realize is how integrated what I do is. So I do 104 episodes of This Week in Startups a year.
Yeah.
Then we have 3 events: the Launch Scale event, which is 3,000 people; Launch Festival, which is 13,000 people this year. And then we usually do 1 or 2 other smaller events like hackathons or the Launch Mobile Conference. A couple of thousand people at those 2. So those are 3 major events. They cost millions of dollars a year to produce. And then, I write once in a while, and I do my angel investing, and I also host an incubator now. I've done 2 classes of the incubator on Thursday nights. What people don't understand is how integrated they are. So when a founder comes to me to invest, I'll say, great, I'd love to hear more about your company. Why don't you come sit in on the incubator and hear and see what I do? And then afterwards, maybe we'll have dinner. And then I'll say to one of my VC or angel friends, hey, why don't you come and give feedback to the companies at the incubator? And then I'll say to my team at Inside and Launch, hey guys, you need to be in the room for the incubator so you're learning. And you're thinking about our businesses in relation to what these founders are learning in the room from another person, which is a speaker from Zenefits or anywhere else.
So it's all plugged together.
It's all plugged together. So in that one instance, we'll record that episode of, let's say Josh Ellman from Greylock, thank you, speaking about growth and how they grew Twitter and all this stuff. Then Josh and I might go to dinner afterwards with another investment, with one of my portfolio companies, with one of my staff members, after having been in the incubator, and it's all happening in a 2.5-hour period of time. Think about the leverage there. And then we cut it and make it an episode of This Week in Startups, which then goes out to 150,000 people. And then I write a blog post. I might write a blog post about what happened. Then you have the festival. Launch Festival is 50 companies launching on stage. Well, 7 of them come from the incubator. And then of the remaining companies, the other 43 that are on stage, I might wind up investing in another 10 or 15 of them. So that means there's 20 of those companies I'm going to wind up, 15 of them, let's say, I'm going to wind up being an investor in. Well, I do 50 investments a year, so now I've done 1/3 of my investments around the Launch Festival. That was my thesis around it. And then additionally, in the audience are now 13,000 people. Those 13,000 people are my Sundance Film Festival audience. That's why I call it the Launch Festival. They're watching other companies on stage. They're watching me MC it. They're watching me as an angel investor do an interview with some great other angel investor or CEO, whatever. And so they're like, wow, Jason's talking to Parker from Zenefits. He's an investor in Zenefits. And then he's got Saka up there, and him and Saka and were investors in Uber together, and he's with Tony Hawk. And all of a sudden, the people in the audience go, I want to be part of that. I want to start a company. Just like at Sundance Film Festival, they say, I want to make a movie. And you put all that together, and what happens is massive efficiency. What people also don't realize is I've been doing this for 25 years, 20 years, in some cases 25. I was doing radio in New York in 1995 on pseudo.com with Josh Harris. And I was so nervous, I'd shake my hands. These are the top 10 websites on the internet. So when I do a radio show, my show, your show, that's effortless for me. That's like a Gordon Ramsay coming in and cooking scallops, right? Like people are like, oh my God, how'd you make those beautiful scallops? It's like, I've made these scallops 1,000 effing times. If I can't get them right on the 1,000th and first time, shame on me. So I only look good in the last 500 scallops I've cooked. If you watch the first 500, I sucked. You might look at these tapes of your first year doing FounderLine and say, oh, in year 5. That's what I do when I look at the first years of This Week in Startups or my conferences from 20 years ago. I was like, oh, they could have been so much better.
One of my favorite parts of Hell's Kitchen is when the guys don't cook the scallops properly, because he goes,
they're raw. They're donkey, big boy.
You're gonna kill somebody with these.
Yes, the scallops are Oreos. He just throws them. He just throws them on the ground, breaks the plate.
All right. Well, those are some great questions. You're obviously warmed up.
There are some great questions.
So let's try and help some founders out. Once again, you can tweet at us. The Twitter handle is @FounderLine. You can email help@founderline.com, and you can also go to our website. So let's start with Derek from Palo Alto.
Hey, Derek from Palo Alto.
With so many startups, some are hugely successful and others aren't able to raise more money. What separates the companies that can raise more money from those who can't? Is it all about the metrics, the people, or something else?
Yes. Here's what it is. Life is a series of tests. So when you give somebody $25,000 or $50,000 and they come to an incubator like Techstars or Y Combinator or the Launch Incubator, it's a test to see if you can get your product done, and in 12 weeks you can impress the hell out of everybody on demo day and raise $250,000 to $1 million. So that you can then have your product in market, get some traction, get some customers, and then impress a larger group of investors to put in $1.5 to $3 million, so that you can show the traction and revenue and users that make a venture capitalist think that this could become a billion-dollar company. So it's just a series of proof points. And at some point, the group gets smaller. So you have 100, let's say I think the last class of Y Combinator, I think it was 120.
Yep.
I'm told 20 of them were not allowed on stage. They were not good enough.
Oh, really?
Well, I think what they do is like you can maybe next class kind of thing. Like, so if Sam doesn't feel you're ready, my understanding is you can check with him, and I think that's really wise of him. He's just like, hey, listen, you got to step it up, right? So there is some benchmark of quality there. So then let's say 100 make it on stage, and it was 2 days. It was like unbelievable. They all had 2 minutes on stage,
crazy.
That's why I only do 7 in my class, because you can't do 100 and maintain quality. Although these were pretty high quality, but you can't maintain the same level of quality with a smaller number. I think that'll be their challenge, is how do you scale this thing, right? And Sam's a super smart guy. I think he'll figure it out. But then you have those 100. Okay, of those 100, each of those represents probably, I don't know, if they have a 2 or 3% acceptance rate, they each represent, whatever that is, 50 other people who tried to get in.
Yeah.
So you went from like, there were 50 people who tried to get in, you were the one who got in. Now you got 100 who got in. Of those, maybe, let's say 2/3 get their funding. Maybe 1/3 don't get funding or don't get significant
They're
funding.
like $2 million or whatever.
Whatever, some $1-2 million is probably what people on average raise coming out of there. Let's call it 2. Well, then out of that group, a certain number of them are going to make it onto the next funding round, maybe half, and then it's going to be like 10% of that group even makes it to Series A, and then, if they make it to Series A, probably half of those make it to Series B, and then we'll see if they get sold or whatever. So the companies that do it, I think, are the ones who build great teams, who get traction, and who investors realize are indefatigable and will not give up. That relentlessness coming up again.
Yep.
So you have a certain relentlessness, but it's like you have to pair it with execution, and execution can be in the form of building a team, getting customers. It's all credibility building.
Yep.
And what I see a lot is a lot of people are making a lot of noise, a lot of bravado, a lot of work on the deck. But, empty can makes the most noise. That's why I don't look at decks, because the decks are just noise.
Yep.
I say, show me the product. And then they start showing me the product, and they talk about how Pinterest sucks. I'm like, okay, I understand that this multi-billion-dollar company that everybody wants to invest in sucks. It's a horrible way to pitch, by the way, is to take something that everybody wanted to invest in and missed, and like, it sucks. Like, you better have a really good product after that, and nobody does. So, you really want to build up this credibility where you say, like, hey, look, the execution is here, the hiring is here, the pre-orders for our product are here, the Kickstarter went well, the press wrote this story, all these little credibility builders that say, you know what, let's keep pulling this string and see where it leads. But a lot of times people are like, you know what, you've proven that this can never be a big business. And if you do happen to prove that, it can mean one of two things. You suck, your execution is terrible, right? Like, so that's all under the rubric of you suck, you should go work for somebody else, you should not be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
You're executing poorly. But then there's also, hey, this idea just doesn't work. Like, you pulled the string and it's like, people don't need a fax machine. Or you pull the string, people don't need Google Glass. They don't want it.
Right.
Okay, now what? Well, you either shut the company down or you pivot and use the assets for something.
Yeah.
So you just have to build credibility. That's the key.
All right, great. Derek, hope that helps you out. Good luck with whatever's next. Let's go to Mikey from New York, your hometown.
Yep.
Given your
You
involvement...
can't just say New York. You got to say where in New York. I mean, it could be Albany, it could be Long Island, Montauk.
I think he's in Manhattan.
All right, you say that. If you're in Manhattan, you got to say where. Tribeca, and Upper East Side. I mean, this matters.
He didn't say. Mikey, if
matters.
you're out there, tweet to us. Jason wants to know where you are. Given your involvement in many different activities, and now with the announcement of Jack Dorsey taking on 2 separate CEO roles, how do you successfully manage your time and be effective at multi-stressful tasks? So I asked you a little bit about that, but maybe tackle the Jack Dorsey, running Twitter, running Square.
A friend of mine runs 2 companies. One is making rocket ships, and the other is making electric cars. And I can tell you...
Who could that be, Jason?
Exactly. And I can tell you that takes a toll on people. And that is not an easy task. And, Elon, who I'm talking about, Elon Musk, obviously, is one of the most resilient, strong people I've met in my lifetime. The South African genes and what they had to go through, I think, growing up in South Africa really forged like a really exceptional group of entrepreneurs. There's a whole group of them here in the Valley.
Yeah.
And, I'm always like, dude, you got to pick one and just, it's just too much for one person. Like, and I worry about him running 2 companies. He can do it, but I don't think any of us, including Jack or Elon Musk, I think he's like a once-in-a-generation kind of entrepreneur.
Yep.
I don't think that Jack can run both, nor do I think Jack wants to run both. I think what Jack is doing, and let's face it, Jack is a supremely talented guy. However, Jack is a supremely talented product person. And I don't think that putting him as the face of Twitter and having him interface with Wall Street will lead to the same type of relationship Larry Page has with Wall Street, which is to say, if you don't like what I'm doing, don't buy the stock, which may not be what Twitter needs right now. Like if you're going to take that approach like Larry Page and Sergey Brin are kind of like, you don't have to own the stock. So you can only say that if the performance is so outrageously good that people will buy stock in a company that where the founders control the company and have super voting shares, and they told you, we're going to run this business for the next 100 years by doing all these crazy moonshots, right? You really have to build up a lot of credibility back to that credibility, and that comes in terms of earnings. So I think Jack is doing this because it's his baby. He's a mensch. He really wants to take care of it and shepherd it. I don't think he has the intention of taking the full-time job, nor do I think he wants it. Square, I think, will be the bigger part of his legacy. That's a wonderful product, wonderful company that has been a little bit unfairly beat up. And that's the thing, once you get to success, the press is going to try to kill you and destroy you.
Both companies, it turns out, right?
Well, of course. And, I have a whole theory on what's wrong with Twitter and what I would do as a CEO. But I think Jack's being a mensch. He's going in there. It calms Wall Street down. It makes everybody feel calm. Adam Bain's the next CEO, clearly. He basically is the guy who, built the ad network, which is the best part of the business. Yep. He shepherded all the video stuff, which is an equally good part of the business. And he's a really great, he's loved by everybody there, and he does a great job on M&A. So if you look at their M&A, Periscope, Vine, they've done a lot of great M&A.
And like tons of, 40 companies or some crazy number.
If you're a founder, the idea of getting bought by Twitter is a dream. Yeah. More so in some cases than Facebook or Google. It is a dream place to go work because everybody loves Twitter. Intellectuals, and the problem with Twitter is everybody wants to believe that Twitter is analogous to Facebook. In fact, what makes Twitter powerful is that it's not Facebook. Facebook is for everybody, and you put your bar mitzvah photos and your birth announcements and your vacation photos from Maui. Twitter, you never see that stuff because Twitter's an intellectual discussion about ideas and art and news and debate and Ferguson and the finals for the NBA and the important stuff going on in the world. And it's the most important people, and it's difficult to set up, and it takes time to tweak your feed properly, which means the people who use it are the top third of the people who use Facebook. Right. If you try to make Twitter Facebook, it's a fool's errand, because if you do succeed, you'll have ruined one of the most unique platforms created in the history of the internet.
Well, that's how you end up with 1 billion people trying it and going away, right?
Precisely. It's too hard for some people. If you're stupid and not technically savvy, Twitter's not for you. Yeah. Now, there will be ways for people to view what's on Twitter. So Vine and Periscope and Twitter itself, a lot of people are viewing that stuff in a non-logged in fashion. And I think that them making a run at YouTube, and this would be the big win. Yeah. I think they could basically get to 1 billion people just by enabling the current group, the current cohort, to have a YouTube-like experience and to share revenue. If they do that, holy cow.
Yeah, you'd love that, huh?
Well, it'd be just incredible. I mean, I think it'd be great for anybody who has video assets, but I just think them sharing revenue with the audience there. Right. I have 200 and some odd thousand followers. I mean, if I could monetize there, holy cow.
Yeah. Well, you've been talking about this for years, right, with the YouTube situation.
Somebody has to be a YouTube competitor. So I think Jack's a great guy. I really respect him. I think he's matured a lot, too, as a leader. There was a little bit of, he got beat up, too. And I think, that's the thing about being successful. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. People really were pretty brutal to him in the hatching Twitter thing. I think he went underground for a year or two, really got the house in order at Square. I think he's really matured as a leader, and I really respect the guy. I think he's a great product leader. Now, that doesn't mean that he can run 2 companies at once, and I don't think he wants to. He's doing this out of loyalty and giri, high sense of G-I-R-I, like a high sense of noble honor. Yep. But he cannot run both companies, and he's going to have Square go public later this year. And when that happens, I think his legacy is going to be really cemented, because he'll have 2 publicly traded companies, 2 deca unicorns,
that's awesome.
And people are writing Square off. So it'd be great for him to put that in everybody's face.
At their own peril, I would say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mikey, hope that helps out. Let's do one more.
But for young entrepreneurs, do not try to do a lot of things. Get one thing working. Yeah. And don't add to it. I mean, in fact, I've been trying to simplify my life. I take on too much. I've been saying no to a lot of things.
Good man. All right, this one, the handle this is from is Philly Poker Pro from Philadelphia.
Okay. Phil Hellmuth. Okay.
Yeah, Phil, what are you doing? I'm just not sure how I speak to an investor about a startup.
Okay.
Can I email someone or you? So obviously, how do people get in touch with you? How do they get your attention for a company?
Yeah. Every angel is different, so you have to realize that.
Yeah.
Some people will literally not take a pitch. You have to come through somebody in their network. They will not reply to an email. You may not be able to find their email. They will not respond on Twitter. Fine. Other people seek things out. So they look at what people are building and they say, hey, I found this interesting thing on Product Hunt or Reddit or Hacker News, and then they go approach them. In fact, two of my favorite investments were Rapportive and Backupify. I found both of those by emailing info@ or webmaster@.
You just saw them on the web.
I read about, I think, one of them on Lifehacker and one of them I read about on Dig. And I said, these are two really cool products. And I was the first and second investor in both those companies.
Cool.
And one of those companies, the CEO of that company 5 years later is staying at my house this week and speaking at the incubator. And Raul from Rapportive, I'm investing in his next company. So really, like, there's all different ways to reach investors in all different styles. For me, I like to look at product. I don't read decks. I don't meet for coffee. I do emails. Mark Cuban, email guy. If you ask Mark Cuban for coffee, he's not going to reply. If you ask me for coffee, I'm not going to reply. If you send me an Envision link, or you send me a product, or you send me images, or a wireframe even, I can't help but look. I'm a product guy. I love clicking on stuff. I love trying stuff. So people will send me a test flight. People will send me an Envision link where, it's a mock-up and you can click on stuff. I love that. And I like to get into an email back and forth with people. So some people will email me. They write these huge, long emails, unnecessary. Short, I'm working on this. This is why it's important. Here's a link. Here's some screenshots. Then a lot of times they'll say, can we meet? And I'll say, here are 3 or 4 questions. They're like, great. Can we talk about this over lunch? Do you not understand how busy people are? If you're an angel investor getting 1,000 emails a day, and I took the time to pick you as one of the 2 or 3 that I'm asking questions to, just answer the questions in email as best you can. So when I got Mark Cuban to be an email and the sole angel investor in Weblogs Inc., my second company, I just emailed him. He replied back immediately. He asked me 2 or 3 questions. I answered them, and I posed a couple of other questions to him. He replied back. All of a sudden, we had this 30 email chain going after a week, and he puts $300,000 in for 15% of the company. We wound up selling it a year later for $30 million.
Sight unseen. Never met him.
Well, I knew him from previously from being a journalist, but had met him maybe one other time in person. But we had stayed in touch. We knew each other through email.
Yep.
And so if you can get into an email thread with somebody important and put your idea there, and then keep them in the loop. So when people say no, most of the time when people say no, what they're saying is, I'm saying no to see how you take that no.
Yep.
And let's see how you take the objection. Now, you don't want to be like moronic and just be like telling the person they're wrong 1,000 times. It's quite possible the person could be wrong, but it doesn't help you to try to tell somebody who's convinced they're right that they're wrong. It helps you to show them they're wrong. So go show them they're wrong in the market, because you're going to raise money if you have a successful company 10 or 20 times. You don't have to get them the first time. In fact, you get them typically the second, third, fourth time, or the second, third, and fourth company.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
So play the long game.
All right. So Philly Poker Pro, hope that helps. Try and reach out to Jason, send him a link, send him a demo, send him something, and maybe he'll respond.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to take a moment to thank our sponsors. So sit back, relax, have a frosty beverage.
Okay. I'll interact on Twitter.
Yeah, or do Twitter. So we couldn't do this show without the great support that we get from our sponsors. For this season, it is Oric, Square One Bank, Accretive Solutions, and Ustream. So I want to start off thanking the team over at Oric. Mitch Zuckley is someone I've worked with over many companies, and just a tremendous guy. The team there is always very helpful. And I always tell people, when you're starting a company, one of your most important advisors is your lawyer. Not because they're going to do your employment contracts and your offer letters and your financing documents. Of course, they're going to do all that basic blocking and tackling. But more importantly, they're going to help you with advice. They're going to have seen way more financings than you will ever see. They're going to know what's happening when you need to hire or fire somebody. All those situations they've been through many, many times, and you want to have somebody great helping you out with advice in those situations. So check out Oric. You can go to their website. The URL, of course, is oric.com. Next, I want to thank our sponsor, Square One Bank. I've known the team over there, Lori Lumenti-Gardi and Sam Baumick, for many years. Again, worked with them on multiple companies. And you want to have a great financial partner for your startup. Of course, they're going to take care of your money and ensure that everything's safe. But you also want some help as a founder, things that make your life easier, like online banking, maybe getting a company credit card as opposed to having everything on your personal credit card. And they can help you out with those sorts of things. The team over there is great. They're always very helpful in trying to offer new services and help you out. You can find out more about them at their URL. It is squareonebank.com. It's square1bank.com. We have another new sponsor this season, which is Accretive Solutions, and they are the leading business outsourcing firm in Silicon Valley. I've worked with Martini Nigano over there across multiple companies. This is something that a lot of founders don't do early on. You want to get somebody who can be your temporary CFO, handle all the accounting, the accounts receivable, the accounts payable, whatever it might be, get your board packages ready. Just make sure all the numbers are coming out correctly and that your business is set up well financially. The team over there is fantastic. It's very cost effective. And instead of trying to find the right CFO when you're 4 people, which makes no sense, get somebody part-time. They work a couple hours a month for you, and they take care of all this stuff that you shouldn't be worrying about. You should be worrying about your product and hiring and everything else that's really going to build your business. You can find out more at their website. It is as-bos.com. And then finally, I want to thank the team over at Ustream. When we first started this, Brad Hunstable was kind enough to be one of our founding sponsors, and we continue to work with the team over there. If you're a company that likes to do live events, or you're thinking about doing a show or whatever it might be, their streaming technology is the best, and you can go find out more about them as well. Their URL is ustream.tv. So that's paying the bills. And let's dive into some more questions here. We have one from Paul in San Francisco.
Hey, Paul.
Paul says,
hey, Paul.
We've raised $700K and are not yet to the point where we can raise an A round. What are the best ways to position ourselves to raise $2 to $3 million given this situation?
Okay, so they've raised 700. They want to raise 2 to 3 million.
The next round.
Yeah. So I would talk to your angel investors, and I would talk to VCs. And for me, what I do is every 6 months in my startups, when I'm personally doing a startup, not when I'm investing, I do what's called a listening tour. I will email 5 or 6 VCs, and I'll say, hey, we know each other from this, or we met at this point, or hey, we haven't met, but we know these people in common, or hey, we haven't met. However, I really respect what you did here and here. I'm working on a company called Mahalo, or Inside, or Weblogs Inc., or Engadget, whatever it is, and it's going really well. I was hoping to fill you in on what we're doing and maybe get some advice from you. They say, are you raising money? We're not raising money right now, but we're looking to get some advice. And if you've already raised 700 and what you're doing is kind of interesting and you can explain it in one sentence, not everything, you want to tease it and say, hey, I'd love to meet with you for coffee and show you what we're doing for 30 minutes. I'll meet you anytime, anywhere, obviously at your office or whatever. And if you've done that every 6 months, with, let's say, 10 VCs and investors,
yep,
and you've stayed in communication with your existing angels, and you've told them every month how much runway you have in the bank, how much money you have, then they're going to be on your side because they'll know your story. So that's where updates are critical. So a lot of founders don't want to give updates because they're afraid of it being bad news.
We actually have a question about that, but
coming up,
I know,
yeah. So,
I know that's a huge deal.
Well, the only reason it's a huge thing for me is because I found that if a company doesn't send updates, they're going to go out of business. And then after 3 or 4 months of no updates, they call me and say, we have 2 weeks of runway or 2 months. And it's really hard to correct.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Then I have to say to somebody like, hey, I dropped a knife. You want to catch it? As opposed to saying like, hey, I've got this great chef and they're figuring it out. I would love for you to meet with them and just give them a little bit of advice and maybe get to know them. It could work out in the future. I invested because of these reasons. And so I think you need to always be prepping for that next round.
Yep.
And you don't want to always be raising because that looks lame. You want to confine the raising to a 2-week period and say, hey, we're raising this amount. These are the terms we're looking for.
Yep.
This is the amount we're raising. This is the use of funds, and look like a strong, confident founder. We're raising $3 million for Inside. We're currently spending $200,000 a month. Adding this $3 million will give us the ability to add these 3 people to the sales team, these 2 developers, these 4 editors. Here's what we're going to do with them. The business has this many hundreds of thousands of unique visitors a month. And by the time we deploy this capital, we will be halfway to break even, and we will have this many millions of uniques. Very confident, confident and humble, right? Like, so we have a lot of work to do. This is how we're going to deploy it.
Yep.
It's not guaranteed, of course, but you got to be confident in like how you're going to deploy it. What I find is a lot of founders are wishy-washy, and if you don't know what you need and want, well, then how are we as investors or the VCs ever going to want to back you?
That's like the kiss of death right there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you start seeing that and you're like, I don't want anything to do with this.
Well, because the great entrepreneurs come in and say, we're raising our A round. We're going to be raising $5 million, not 3 or 5 or maybe an extension for $1 million or a bridge. We're raising 3. We're raising 3 for these reasons. You are the perfect investor for these reasons. We want you on our board for these reasons. I have people who I've invested in who say to me, can you introduce me to Mark Cuban, Elon Musk, and Travis? And I'm like, okay, tell me why your smoke detector, or whatever, I'm making this example up, but tell me why your smartwatch is a match for Mark Cuban, Travis, or Elon. And they're like, well, I just think they're cool.
Yeah.
And I haven't really thought about that.
And they're
I'm like,
rich.
Whatever. And it's like, okay, well, Elon Musk doesn't do investing. Travis doesn't do investing. And Mark Cuban does invest. What's your thesis there? Come up with a thesis of why this is a good investment for him. And I can tell, have you done research? What does he like to invest in? They're like, I don't know. What do you know? I'm like, well, if you look at what he's invested in, that would tell you what he's interested in.
Yeah.
He cares about valuation. He cares about revenue. He doesn't like non-revenue businesses. I can tell you just by watching him on Shark Tank or watching what he says on Twitter or what he blogs about.
Yeah.
So what I tell anybody who I've invested in is, tell me who the top 3 people are. Not firms, top 3 people. Why they're a match. And tell me in detail why you want them as part of your team. What is it about them? And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, start thinking about it. Well, how do I think about it? Well, look at other companies that have been successful, talk to their CEOs, or look at them in Crunchbase or AngelList, figure out who invested in them, figure out who the partner was, and then read everything that partner has written. And if she's written, it's Eileen Lee at Cowboy Ventures, and you follow her on Twitter and you basically, read everything about her, then when you pitch her, you can say, you've invested in these 3 companies, we're like this. Or Bill Gurley is into marketplaces, we're like this. Oh, Social Capital Partnership likes things that scale, that are in healthcare and education and this and marketplaces and SaaS businesses. They're really into SaaS businesses. They did Yammer. Okay, and I know the partner there who does SaaS is Mamoon, not Ted, or it's Ted, not, Chamath, whatever it is.
Exactly.
You gotta be much more focused and seem put together.
And do your homework. I mean, this is basic stuff, right? So
nobody does it.
Yeah.
Literally, I would say 19 out of 20 founders do not do what I just described.
Well, so one of my companies just asked me, so which firms should we go after?
Jeez.
And I was like, that is the wrong question. Like, think about your business. Like, what do you guys do specifically? And I won't say right now, but and then go target the people. The people are what matters.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Paul, good luck with the raise. Let's move on to another one here. This is from Richard in Hong Kong. Hello, Richard. How should a founder strike the right balance between bootstrapping a startup and raising money from investors who can add value not only in money, but also advice, mentorship, and network? So money versus advice, mentorship, network. What do you think?
Which is more important?
How do you strike the right balance is what Richard's asking.
Well, people, for me or for them?
I think it's for him. It didn't say what kind of business, so
yeah,
it's hard to say. Right?
But I would say, listen, there are people who just give money, and they're passive, right, as investors, and then there are people who are what you would call advisors who give no money and give tons of advice. At the end of the day, the advice and the network are helpful, but you're going to have to run the business. So this idea that people are going to be amazing for giving you advice, like, it turns out most businesses there are very few instances where an entrepreneur can say, well, my angel investor told me this, and that made everything work.
Yep.
Or this VC, at the board meeting said, we should do X, and that had such a dramatic effect, it changed the company's course forever. Because the investors don't know every intimate detail. They're not every day. They can't affect change. What they can do is the best ones I found, like Roelof Botha at Sequoia, they know what questions to ask. Because they see the whole playing field and they can say, well, have you thought about the iPhone versus an Android versus tablets? Because tablets, although they're sexy right now, he told me this like 3 years ago, I've seen in other companies that they spend a lot of time on a tablet app and it winds up reaching 2 or 3 or 4% of the traffic, and the app winds up being 96%. So if you spent an equal amount of time on 4% of the audience, you might want to have just focused on the smartphone, even though people might complain you don't have an iPhone app. Those people complaining are only 4% of the audience or whatever. And so like the right question is so critical. And I think that's what you're looking for, and that's what the great investors do, is they just tell you like, hey, you can think about these things, or they can alert you to things, or they can, one of the things I didn't know that I would be doing, but that I do, you know, every week probably, is somebody will say, I want to hire this person. Our company is not that notable, but they noticed you on the cap table, and they watch This Week in Startups, or they respect you because of the angel investment in Uber or whatever it is, where I got lucky, you know. And they say, would you talk to them about why you invested $500,000 in this company? And so I will. And in fact, I write blog posts why I invested $250,000 in Swell, why I invested $400,000 in Calm.com, why I invested in Better. I write these blog posts in a lot of ways so that the founders can send them to potential employees and say, this is why Jason invested. This was his thesis.
Hiring tool, huh?
People don't realize that when I write it. Some people are like, oh my God, you're bragging. I'm like, what am I bragging about? I'm explaining my thesis. And then what also happens is I'll have people come to me and say, hey, Jason, I read your thing. I think you're wrong, or I think that's a really good thesis. Can I get an intro to the company? So I will get investors for my companies by writing those posts. So by explaining my thesis, people would say like, oh, you really don't want to explain why you're doing what you're doing? Well, once I've got equity in the company, everything after that point that grows the company is in my benefit.
Yeah.
So whether that's more people coming in and giving money or more people joining the company. So you really, I think, anyway, let's go to the next question.
Okay. All right. So Richard, hope that helps. Let's see. This one is from Ryan in Dallas.
Hey, Ryan in Dallas.
What is the perfect introduction? Do you read tweets people send you?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at my reply stream, you'll see me replying to people and goofing off for, 20 tweets a day, 40 tweets a day. About a third of a Mark Andreessen. So, yeah, I goof off on Twitter all the time. Now, if people send me like pitches via Twitter, like I don't think that's ever resulted in anything. Although I have become aware, I'll take that back. I don't know if that's directly resulted in an investment, but having a dialogue with somebody has directly resulted in me looking at stuff. And some of that stuff I've looked at has wound up on the stage at my conferences or on This Week in Startups, or I've written about it, or I've retweeted it. So I do think Twitter is a way to intelligently engage with people. I don't think it's like, can I have a meeting on Twitter is a great idea. I do think, at Jason, really enjoyed episode 451. Saka was amazing. We're doing something very similar to Uber, except it's for, pizza, and it's the Uber of pizza. I think you'd love it. Here's a link. That's it. So don't try to hard sell me. Can I get a meeting? Can I get this? Like, again, there's a whole group of people here who are talkers, and then there's people who do stuff in the world. Your goal in those initial days is to take yourself out of the bucket of talkers and put yourself into the bucket of people who do stuff. If people tell me they have an idea or they want to tell me their idea, I don't even reply. Because if you have not heard me say 1,000 times, I don't meet with people to talk about ideas. I meet with people after I'm impressed by their prototype. I've said this over and over and over again. If you're too stupid to know this about me, like, why would I meet with you?
Yeah.
You haven't done any basic research. I always tell people, a prototype is worth 1,000 words, 1,000 PowerPoint decks. Like, if you show somebody as opposed to tell somebody what you're going to do, you've moved yourself from the 9,990 people who talk about stuff and make decks.
The wannabes.
Yeah, the wannabes, to the 10 out of 10,000 people who actually build something. And of those 10, only a third of them build something that is credibly executed. So you just want to work on your execution.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take that much. Like, if you can't be bothered to spend $5,000 or $10,000 building a prototype of what you want to do, then why should I, and I don't mean to say this to be obnoxious, but like, why should I take you seriously? Unless you've done something before. It would be like somebody saying, like, put me in the game, coach. And it's like, okay, we'll work you out on Tuesday. And it's like, well, I don't want to work out. I just want to be put in the game. It's like, it kind of doesn't work that way. Unless you're Allen Iverson, maybe you get away with it. You know, like Allen Iverson doesn't have to practice.
He's broke, I just heard.
Yeah, sad.
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 The man, the other AI. By the way, Warriors, well done. That was awesome. That was a great season.
For sure.
I will always be a Bulls fan. Jason will always be a Knicks fan.
For sure.
But being in the Bay Area, being a season ticket holder since the 90s, like, you know, that was amazing. So thank you. I'm wearing my gold and blue today. I don't know if you can tell.
Very subtle. Well done.
All right, let's keep going here. Speaking of prototypes, this one is from Donna. Doesn't say where.
Hey, Donna.
Hey, Donna. How does a non-technical founder who built a self-funded prototype of a product that solves a real-life problem get into a leading accelerator program without the magical team or pedigree? Where do resourceful, scrappy, first-time founders go if they happen to live in a less tech-forward location? Can and will travel. Thanks.
Okay, so move backwards. As I tell people, if you're a first-time person and you're like the greatest basketball player ever, and you're invited to be in the NBA, go to the NBA. It would be like you're a great actor and somebody invites you to, and you want to do theater, you move to New York or London. If you want to do movies and TV, you move to LA.
Yeah.
So geography certainly matters. So you basically increase your credibility 100-fold if you're in the area where the people are who are taking this stuff seriously. So if you truly wanted to build an internet company, like moving to Silicon Valley literally puts you, in the front of the line because you're here.
Yep.
Now, there are so many developers here who are so affluent, so rich from their Google shares, from their Twitter shares, from whatever. And there's one of them out there who may feel some affinity towards your idea, no matter how niche it is. So if your idea is, educational apps for autistic kids, which was a great startup I saw a couple of years ago. If your kid's got autism, well, and actually it's 2 autism startups I know of, that is going to be the startup where you want to work. And you will take less money and invest your own money as a developer to be in it. So look at what you're building and the mission of it, and then find developers who are aligned with that and say, hey, this should exist in the world. And I think you believe that too. How would you like to come on this journey with me? And that's how you get a technical co-founder. You don't get a technical co-founder by posting to Craigslist and just looking for random people. You get it by starting a blog and talking about your project and what you're trying to accomplish, and then getting that on Hacker News or going to the JavaScript forum, or the SIG group, or going on Meetup and being everywhere until you find somebody and telling everybody, if you know somebody who you think would be a good technical co-founder, here's what I'm doing. And writing a blog post, I need a technical co-founder to help me work on autism apps that would be paced learning and that everybody can afford and that will have a subscription model. And just keep looking for the people who are passionate about your mission. Because if you find the people who are passionate about your mission, then they're going to want to go to an incubator. If you find people who are passionate about making money, building an app, there are people who can pay more money than you.
Yep.
So that's not going to work. And you probably, if you do get a developer, they're not going to put their heart and soul into it. So when I hire developers for Inside, I'm always like, what do you think is broken about the news business today? What do you think is special about curation? What do you love and hate about Reddit, or Brain Pickings or Media Redefined or whatever other curation service? And if they can't answer that, I don't even let them submit their resume. So we use the Resumator, which you're forced to log in with your LinkedIn. You're forced to answer 3 questions we ask. If you don't answer the 3 questions, you can't write a cover letter and explain to us why you want to be part of the team. We've already negated you.
Yeah.
We'd rather get 6 resumes than 600 if the 6 resumes fill out those questions.
All right. Good luck, Donna. Hope you figure it out. We've got time for a couple more here, I think.
Lightning round.
Sam in Burlingame. I work with a lot of millennials and find that they have a sense of entitlement unlike anything I've seen before in my career. I'm sure that many of the founders you work with are millennials and probably exhibit this trait as well. What's the best way to handle these situations?
Yeah, so millennials, I have a lot of feelings on these.
I haven't heard your millennial speech yet. No.
You're kidding.
No.
Well, yeah, millennials were given a false bill of goods. I mean, they were told everybody is a champion, winning doesn't matter, your personal happiness is paramount, your relationships and your experiences in life are more important than your job and your
Here's
skills.
Your trophy.
All this stuff. And so, in a way, they have dialed in that a sense of purpose in the world is important, and they've got dialed in that your happiness is important. In a way that we as Gen Xers, or certainly baby boomers, were told to shut up, get a job, and really get a roof over your head. So they grew up a little bit soft. in a lot of cases. However, that you can't paint a brush for everybody, you know, and you can't paint one brush for everybody. So there's a group of them, I would put a number on it, a third, who are incredibly driven and want to change the world and who care about their skills. And those are the ones that become entrepreneurs. The other 2/3 wind up doing nonprofits, NGOs, or, you know, just effing around until they realize, my God, I got to put a roof over my head, and we're having a baby, or whatever life event happens that makes them realize, like, it's time to stop fooling around. But I had a short story. I had somebody have a test when people come interview. I shouldn't say it here, but if it's a millennial, I say, is there something you'd rather be doing than this? Because I can't imagine that my idea and what I'm working on exactly aligns with everything you're working on. What would you, like, if you could have your dream job, what would it be? Any sane, intelligent person in an interview with an egomaniacal founder,
like yourself,
like myself, would know the proper answer is, no, Jason, there is nothing I would rather do right now than work on what you're doing at Inside/Launch, San Francisco Startup, because it is so amazing, it's going to change the world. That's the right answer, if you want the job.
Right.
But if you don't want the job, and you're not smart enough to fake it, you will say what one person said to me is like,
that's awesome.
You know what, Jason, they said to me? You're right. What I would really love to do is I saw this movie about, like, the migrant workers in China, and I want to go ride a bike across China to try to make this film for migrant workers to, you know, like, people could understand their plight. And I just thought to myself, like, I've seen this documentary. I know a lot about this. I've read about it. I've been to China. Those people, they don't want to be in the north. They don't want to live on a farm and everybody's taking a shower out of a spigot. And they're, like, eating rice every day. Like, they want a car, they want an apartment, they want to have a Gucci belt, fake, real, whatever. They are aspiring. And by the way, what they're aspiring to do is take your lifestyle and your jobs. So you are an idiot if you think when you drive across your mountain bike across China that you're doing anything other than, you know, servicing your own insane ego. And so I said to the person, I said, that's amazing. That's really.
This is a real story?
That's a real story. So I said to the person, I said, wow, that's amazing.
Like, this is a pretty detailed example.
I'm like, this is beautiful. Like, this is a really great thing, you know. And I asked them, like, 2 more questions. And they said, great, we're going to get right back to you. Thank you so much. I went outside. I went, shh. I said, tell this person, like, we're sorry we filled the job. You know, and write them a nice goodbye letter. But it's like, really, like, you're that clueless. But, you know, most of them, I think, the other great thing about them is if you do have a sense of purpose in your company and you can find somebody who's aligned with it, God, they're going to work so hard.
Yeah.
God, they're going to work so hard. And they don't care about material things as much, and they're so technically savvy. The right ones.
Yeah.
So, you know, I heard this about Gen X, like, we're all, like, depressed and on Prozac, right? And, you know.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
So that was accurate, too.
Yeah.
There's some truth to it, but, you know, you can't paint with a wide brush. And I see the best of the millennials.
All right,
I'm lucky.
good. All right, we're going to do one last quick one.
Okay.
From Jack in New Jersey.
Hey, Jack in Jersey.
Not the Jack, but Jack.
Jack in Jersey.
Who are some of your favorite angels and VCs and why?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And your least favorite as well, if you dare.
Yeah, you probably don't want to say bad things, but I can tell you a bad behavior story. So Chamath at Social Capital, Josh at DFJ, Bill Gurley.
This is the good side.
At Benchmark. These are the ones I hate. No, these are all great. Saka's amazing. Tim Ferriss is amazing. You know, I'm very lucky. Tony Conrad from True. And Josh Koppelman from First Round. You know, I'm lucky to work with a lot of these great people. Naval at Angel List is amazing. Dave Morin, Eileen Lee, Cyan Bannister. These are great, great investors who I work with frequently and collaborate with frequently. Ted Maidenberg and Mamoon over at Social Capital as well. And of course, everybody at Sequoia, who I mentioned earlier, Ruloff, both Michael Moritz, Doug Leone. These are all, like, amazing, amazing, the gold standard. But I will tell you that I've had people who have disappointed me, and the number one reason is, you know, if I send somebody over and they get shifted from the main partner, this is like one of the top firms.
Handed
Handed it off 3 times. Like, one of the most famous venture capitalists did this to me 3 times, and I said to him, you know, I'm just want to let you know why I'm not sending you any more companies. And this is like a major billionaire, one of the highest profile venture capitalists in the history of venture capital. I said, I'm not sending anybody anymore, and here's why. And my wife was like, you said that to who? And I said, yeah. I said, don't you need them? I said, I don't. And I certainly don't want my founders calling me back and saying that this person set up a meeting and then sent an associate or a junior person there. You know what happened? Billionaire wrote me an apology letter.
Right.
And he said, you're right.
It's awesome.
Because you know what the thing is? We're all nobodies in this industry. I came into this industry as a nobody. People didn't want me in this industry. I was a kid from Brooklyn. I was an outsider. I was awkward. And people made fun of me. People still do. Some people criticize me. They think I'm too outspoken or whatever it is. But let me tell you something. This industry is fantastic because anybody, and this gets to the meritocracy thing, which I think has been a hot debate. I truly believe that this is a meritocracy. And I know that's a difficult thing for people to hear. But if you build a great product, you build a great team, you will get angel investing. Yep. And you know what? The results are all that matter. If you get traffic for your product or service, people literally don't care if you're a man, a woman, or what race you are. Now, It might matter in a lot of other places. It might matter in a lot of other respects, being an employee somewhere, whatever. But I can tell you in the investment community, they will just literally run over their grandmother to get into a deal if it's growing with a hockey stick. So for me, as an outsider, I always just said, I'm going to be so good, they have to pay attention to me. And I just made as much noise as I could, and I wrote better than everybody, and I threw bigger conferences, and you know, because you watched me come up in this business, you know, it was a little bit awkward at times, but you couldn't say, like, he's not a good writer. He's not a good interviewer. That conference wasn't awesome. You had to pay attention. Yeah. And that's my message to entrepreneurs. You have to be so good that people pay attention. And it's on you to do that, nobody else.
All right, well, that's a great place to stop. That was awesome. I'm sorry we're out of time. We could keep going.
It went by like an hour and 10 seconds.
We can keep going another hour, but we got to go. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
You can follow Jason on Twitter, of course. His handle is remarkably @Jason.
There you go.
We are off next week, but in 2 weeks, we're going to have another episode. Our guest will be Philip Rosedale, who is a pioneer in the virtual reality field, the founder of both Second Life and now High Fidelity. It'll be a great show. It's on Wednesday, July 1st at 5 o'clock Pacific time. Thank you again to our amazing sponsors, Oric, Square One Bank, Creative Solutions, and Ustream. You can follow us on
Ustream.
You love Ustream, great. Follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @FounderLine. You can register at the website for updates. You can download the podcast from iTunes. Thanks for watching. Here's to the crazy ones, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Go Dubs.